I learned my frustration that most organizations, people are passionate, but they don't have skills to establish sustainability within the organization. And it was the backbone of Ubuntu Development Solution. I'm also a master's student for development studies. And through Ubuntu, I like he has said, like David has said, we basically build capacities and enhance partnerships with our sole aim of promoting sustainable social development in Africa. I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I yearn to raise Africa to the level whereby we are able to solve our own problem. If we analyze carefully, most of our solutions are not formulated by Africans. So I just want to raise sustainable organizations in Africa that are not donor dependent. So I'm pro-social enterprises, which have the hybrid model. So basically that is all we are about. And thank you.
Thank you so much. That's so much of what you guys are doing. And if all that is going to come into place in the African context, then you can be able to realize the aim that we are looking at, youth engagement for global action. Because if we can drive our local home-based ideas and solutions, then we'll have already set the stage for what we are moving into next. So thank you so much, Robert and Nafula, for the introductions. So from your background in the terms of work that you're doing, what are the key things that you feel like in terms of entrepreneurship, what is missing for the young people? And actually, maybe you could just give a background on what you do first. As an organization, that's, for example, Villgro Kenya, what you do as Robert.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you so much. So Villgro Kenya, we are a social enterprise business incubator focusing in the health and life sciences. So what do you mean by social enterprise? I think the way we define it is we want to build for-profit companies that are addressing the needs of Wanjiko. So Wanjiko is a key market, and it's not an issue of trying to focus on middle class or the very wealthy, which is usually the normal temptation for businesses. You want to make money, but we are saying we want to actually make money as we are serving Wanjiko. So we want to make money as we are achieving social impact. Then the second thing we add to our definition of social enterprise is it also needs to be a high growth SME. So what do I mean by that? A high growth SME is basically saying from day one, the blueprint of that company is a company that's a multinational company. So it's built for rapid growth, rapid scale. It's built for venture-backed scaling. So then now I'm introducing venture. So how do we address that? Yeah. The venture capitalist is basically when they're trying to make a decision as to how they're going to invest their money. They're looking for a company whereby you're going to deploy your capital today, and you want to exit in 5 to 7 years, with a return on investment that is roughly about 10 times what you put in. So the business model for a venture capitalist is basically to create value in the marketplace and to create value in the company, because how they're looking to make money is not the dividend. It's really by selling their equity holding to either a private equity, or you do an IPO and then a Nairobi Stock Exchange or something like that. But in essence, so it's not as easy as a walk in the park. You need to understand what are Wanjiko's pain points in terms of the health system. Is it issues to do with last mile? Is it issues to do with COVID in terms of how do we get diagnosis done correctly and all that? Or is it issues to do with pricing? Again, is it affordable? And is the quality of care also up to scratch? And you could attract this from many angles. We've supported companies that are doing health financing through microinsurance, through capitation models. We are supporting companies that are actually invention-based, engineers that are inventing medical devices, diagnostics. We've also supported companies that are doing healthcare delivery, the last mile healthcare delivery, telemedicine, and things like that. So the way we look at health is cross-cutting. It can be anything from actual healthcare delivery, where it's doctor-patient, it could be manufacturing, it could be a supply chain solution, or it could be health finance. So even in fintech, we are actually quite active there. But the basic thing that holds it all together is that the social impact is a public health social impact that is really pushing the needle. And all of these companies, they do meet the criteria. They are high growth SMEs. They've been built for scale. We do have traction of companies that from when we start in and we come in when they're pre-revenue, they've been able to go on, and across our portfolio, we've for investments of roughly about 800, we're now moving closer to $1 million. They've been able to unlock about 8 times that from venture capitalists. So the design of the companies is sound, the business, the traction in terms of in the marketplace is sound, and it's a market traction that actually brings investors in. So our job as Villgro Kenya is really to help you to understand the market, helps you to move beyond problem solution fit to product market fit. And then how do you build a business model? How do you validate that business model? And how do you demonstrate traction for the investors? And how do you also build a scaling strategy? Because again, investors don't come in if they don't see how are you going to scale. They're not satisfied with you being a company that is Kenyan focused. Especially if you're doing invention-based, you need to be thinking, East Africa as a minimum of a domestic market. Otherwise, if you're not export-oriented, there's no scope for profitability. So, and then the last one is also what's the exit strategy for investors? So investors tend to be a bit lazy. You kind of need to think through for them how they're going to make money. You need to be able to explain to them how they're going to make money. They need to see the investment thesis end to end, and also then see the traction, the actual evidence in terms of in the market that you're on track in terms of those projections for them to come on board. So Villgro is able to speak from the science to the business to the investment readiness and regulatory, which is the other big thing that that characterizes the health sector. And that's what we call our incubation services. And then the other side of it is that we also must be sustainable. So we also do make investments in the companies that we support with the same business model as a venture capitalist, that we also want to exit at an X return, and then be able to plow that back into the new cohort of companies that we'll be incubating. So that is how we operate briefly as Villgro. We have been working not just in Kenya, we have been working across East Africa. We've supported companies in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Uganda, and now in Tanzania. We are also looking at how we can scale beyond that to become not Villgro Kenya, but Villgro Africa, with our sites on Accra, on Lagos, on pretty much everywhere else in the continent, because we know health sector is basically underserved, underfunded, and there's no way the governments, given the way our population is growing, can be able to address that aspect of health as a human right without private sector investment. So we see our job really as being the ones that can do the heavy lifting of working with high risk startups, de-risk them through our incubation program, and create a pipeline of exciting companies that venture capitalists can be able to invest in.
That's great. So actually, just a question that I would want to pose to you, that is, in terms of Villgro started, like, let's say around 2012?
No, actually, that's a good question. So Villgro, we started our operations here in Kenya in 2015. However, Villgro is probably the oldest. I think we are actually the oldest social enterprise incubator globally. We started in the year 2000. So we're 20 years old. We have a presence in India. That's where Villgro started. We were the first ones to replicate the model out of India here into East Africa.
Yeah.
We also have a presence in the Philippines, serving the Asian economies.
Yeah.
So the Philippines, Vietnam, Myanmar, Thailand, and then we also have Villgro USA that has just started last year. So the beauty of it is, and this has been one of my big lessons in life, is never reinvent the wheel. So when there's an opportunity to actually work with something that's proven, it allows you to move much faster, and you're able to build on that as opposed to starting from scratch. And so we've basically taken a model that was already proven in India. In India, I think we've had tremendous impact. More than 6 million people who've been served or touched by Villgro incubating companies. The attraction is much bigger than us. When I'm talking about $8 million of follow-on funding for Villgro, is close to the $20 million dollars. But what I've also been able to see is that what has taken them 20 years to achieve, as Villgro Kenya, we've been able to achieve it in a fraction of that time, simply because we didn't have to go through the University of Hard Knocks. We're literally leveraging their learnings, and that's really informed a lot of how we operate.
Okay. Thank you for that. So now the comparison that I was trying to bring on board would be, in terms of Villgro, you starting Villgro in Kenya, the Villgro Kenya Incubation Hub, and the kind of organizations that are coming under you as organizations that want to be supported through the process. What are the gaps that you feel are there in terms of you starting from scratch on your end, and how these people are coming on board, and how can we bridge that kind of a gap that you might be identifying in your case? Because probably for the people who are here with us, you find probably someone is into a business model, but they don't know how to go about it. And there's that kind of, there's a number of terms that you mentioned, the venture backing, the business model, the financing aspect. How do we know that you have a right business model that will enable you pay your bills, because you have to pay your bills to exist and do the business, but at the same time make a social impact in the society?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So there's what I've seen is the biggest challenge we have when it comes to pipeline, getting quality pipeline. I think the first one is there's a major disconnect between academia and private sector. So the academia does not understand how do you, because we do a lot of research in this country. I think Kenya is second only to South Africa in terms of the health R&D. And you'll find it's not just health, even in agriculture, it's the same thing. So if you talk to all the people who fund R&D on this continent, they'll tell you anything complex, you basically have two options. You're either going to give it to South Africa or you're going to give it to Kenya. If it is, and we have the critical mass in terms of the scientists, we have the amazing infrastructure. A good example is the malaria vaccine, the RTSS trial that was done, and it's now in the market. For RTSS clinical studies, Kenya is the only country that had more than one clinical study site. We actually had 3. 2 in Western Kenya, one at the coast. Yeah. So that speaks a lot in terms of do we have enough clinical study monitors? Do we have enough IRBs to be able to do this? Do we have enough statisticians to be able, the data safety monitoring board? We have a lot of capacity in this country for R&D, and then it's just clinical trials. It gets bigger when you're even now thinking whether it's implementation research or whether it is even basic research. We're doing vaccine development, we're doing diagnostics development, we're doing, so we're all up in, whether you're talking of drug discovery, vaccine discovery, diagnostics, looking for the biomarkers and all that. I've been involved in all of these kinds of research, and I know enough people who are doing this research, and that's, so it's not a novelty to do health R&D in this country. The challenge is, for all the R&D that we're doing, how has this impacted Wanjiko? Are we still dying from cholera? Are we still dying from HIV? Are we still? And the answer is yes. And it's not because we're doing bad science. It's because to translate the science to impact, you need business. The business of the science and the understanding of it has really been the bottleneck. So that's one major gap that we see as Villgro Kenya. The second one is, then there are other innovations that don't have to come from academia. They can actually just come from private sector. They can come from, they don't have that strong STEM orientation, especially like for the tech solutions, the digital innovations and stuff like that. They typically don't come from academia. Now, but the challenge then becomes, what problems are these digital innovations solving? Are they actually identifying the correct bottlenecks in the industry? Or are they coming up with solutions where, when you talk to the industry, really, it's not really that high on their priority. And that mismatch, and I think that specifically is a major challenge because of in the digital innovations, because it's primarily the youth that we see leading in digital innovation. But youth alone, the creativity aspect is not adequate, because ultimately it requires a very sound knowledge of the industry to identify the bottlenecks. And one of the things I always tell people is there's some heavy lifting that was done for us in the SDGs. If you are to look at the SDG targets, those were not arrived at in a light manner. There was a lot of research that went to saying what are the priority problems that really warrant the time, the effort, the investment to solve. And if you were to focus on the SDG targets specifically and say, how can we solve this? Then it's very unlikely that you'd end up with a solution looking for a problem. You'd actually be solving a problem where, in most cases, there is the market mechanism for you to earn a living and for you to scale your solution is almost already there. So I think the lack of unpacking of the SDGs, because it really did a lot of work in terms of validating the problems, the needs assessment that was done, not just at a country level, but global south. So that you basically be talking about a solution that works for Kenya, works for Africa, works for India, works for Latin America. Now that is a scalable solution. So the question then is, how do you get the business model right? So I think that is another gap. And then the last one is the mentality that is called hustler mentality. I think we have a connotation to it where what I find is I'll meet an entrepreneur who has this startup, but also has this other startup and also has this other startup. And then on top of all that, they're employed. Now, at this point, you have to understand, you have to ask yourself, from an investor perspective, how can somebody give you money if you're not making where they're putting their money a priority? And I think the element of having so many great ideas, to me, I think it's great, but then you can't do all of them. You just need to then prioritize and say, this is the one that I will take, and then push it. And then now, after it has scaled, or maybe I've exited, and I'm now coming back as a millionaire and investor myself, then now I want to start this other one. But that ability to understand that you must pay the opportunity cost of dropping some of your great ideas, I think is also really, really important to highlight. And especially now, because we've been having a lot of discussions about expatriate-led startups versus the Kenyan startups. The one thing that the expatriate-led startups do is that they guarantee their focus. Number one, they have an advantage in terms of they typically have some financial ability to focus on the company whether it's making money or not for a year or 2 years. So for a lot of Kenyans, we struggle to do that because you still need to pay your rent, you still need to, so that's where the hustle mentality comes in. But then the hustle mentality then means if you are spread too thin, then you're not investable. So one of the things that we've done in Villgro is to make a condition that even if you are a startup of 3-4 innovators, those 3-4 innovators, can they pick one person that they will pay So, if it is me and you, David, and I add Nafula into our startup, we make Nafula the lead. So me and you, we hustle and we make sure we pay her rent as we are paying ours, and we pay her commute as we are paying ours. But that allows us then to have an 100% level of effort into the startup. And as it starts to get traction, and as the investors come on board slowly, then the next person is brought into the company, and then the next one. And then soon enough, you start realizing that it gets to a point, all the co-founders are now 100% focused. But we do give that leeway, because otherwise, if we don't do that, we cannot be able to invest in startups that have got no 100% focus on the business. So there's been those gaps, and there's lots of interesting ways of how do we address them, but those are some of the ways we are trying to do it. And of course, the other thing is, of course, we do put in capital ourselves to also make it easier for the founders to actually focus on the business.
Thank you so much. So it's like the main gaps that you're looking at in terms of translation of the research that we're doing into actual solutions to problems. Then the needs assessment, some people have problems they want to solve, but they've not done much research, so that the solution might not be matched to the solution that they want to bring. Then the business model bit, and then the focus aspect. So those are some of the critical things that we need to look at as well. So I'll move to Nafula to give us a perspective in terms of what she's doing through Ubuntu, and then what are the gaps that she feels like existing in the development world, and some of the things that we can focus on well. Focus on, and then see how we can bridge the gap and get solutions to these problems that are existing. Because you find, personally, when you mention the aspect of someone working on being employed and working on an enterprise and all, it's something that we as an agriculture as well, we do it partly, and we are getting people to run the program. But at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, what is the priority at this point? So what do you feel are some of the gaps as well from your end, Nafula? And if they're aligned to what Robert is saying, what are measures you guys are putting in place to ensure we support the upcoming startups?
Okay, I like speaking from my experience, because that is what drove me up to where I am. I realized that there is a lot of mediocrity in social development, and even perceptions outside there. Like, for instance, I personally pursued finance for my undergraduate. My passion had always been in social development. When I was in campus, I was just volunteering, and I'd won quite a number of awards. So when I resigned my job, like when I grew up, I just knew like this venture, like it's for failures, things like those ones. So when I resigned now to start pursuing it on a full-time basis, that was on 2016. I just graduated in 2014 because I was now chasing my passion. The thing is, I got a lot of backlash. Like, you are like how can you get an A? Just leave your work to go on the streets, chill, like start going to the slums, speaking to women. So there's a lot of mediocrity on social development in Africa. And if we analyze our problem as Africa, actually the main gap is on social development. The main gap is on our attitude. The main gap is our beliefs. The main gap is that we do not invest. This is a session that has been heavily left to donors and foreigners. And what we don't know is that these people are advancing their agenda, not our agendas. They're advancing their interests. And that's why we've never asked ourselves that despite decades and centuries of pumping foreign donor money and other things, there's no substantial development in Africa. So I feel like Africa have to take it and take up the mantle of developing themselves without looking at the West. And also now still to build on what I want to say, when you also analyze on our business models as Kenya and even Africa, majority, the kind of entrepreneurship is mainly destructive and unproductive. It's rent seeking and rent destruction. So so I wanted to inspire sustainable social development, because when I've been an activist for a while, trying to build change. I've been in political spaces. One thing I realized, the people who are driving change in Kenya are very passionate people. Majority of them don't have the skills, but they have the passion. So what I'll say on the gaps the main gap is on skills. People don't have skills. The people who are doing the main work, and then they also don't have capital, and also mentorship, someone to work with them on that. Because I remember also my frustration when I was running organization. You have this good agenda, but because you want money, like a donor will make you alter your agenda. And that is what prompted me, like now to found, like when I founded Ubuntu Development Solution, like I want social enterprises, like organizations that they still have sustainable models, because there's a very important aspect that you said, David, and I want to emphasize on that, and I keep on telling young people, you cannot be fighting for everyone's rights while you neglect your own rights. Like most people are doing this thing for volunteering, and we want to create social organizations that are driving social change. Sustainability also meaning, do the people who are driving those social change, do they have like a salary or what? So we have to put up models, business models. Like I like what my colleague has said, everything. Like I'm just reiterating what he said. I also like the fact that they contribute money and give the person who is doing all the donkey work. Because when we look traditionally, it's been like there's been a lot of volunteering that hasn't been sustainable, because you cannot volunteer forever and you have needs. So my interest is in professionalizing development work and making it like making people see the need. Because when you look at our problem, the gender issues, the what, they are all social. So what we do basically at Ubuntu, we have like 3 main services. We do management advisory. So we are an inclusive organization. Like we try to come up with inclusive packages, because we have clients from all walks of life. We have like the philanthropists who just dish money. So our model has been like, instead of them dishing money, like why can't they do something, a development course, like a development agenda, e.g. starting a hub at home. Like we help them to supervise that. Like if they don't have the capacity, we implement it for them. They're free to take the credit. But what we just want to see is that all this money that is always dished by brokers, we put it into a development perspective. So we have people from philanthropists who are our clients. We also work with companies through their CSR. Most companies, the way they've been doing the CSR, it's just for publicity. Well, we understand their needs. They just want publicity and visibility and to get clients. But now we help them now to put it into useful, like to invest it, let's say, in human development. So that in as much as they are winning, they're getting their visibility. It's also tangible. You just don't go somewhere, you do something and you call it like you've done something substantial. So under management advisory, some of our output are strategic plan. Like we said, we are talking about sustainable development. So we do strategic plan, business model. We help people running social enterprises to create their business models and from what they do. And we do project proposal, which is very essential in you attracting the right partner who share your mission and vision. And then we also do monitoring and evaluation. Like I said, I'm a development researcher and a development practitioner. So we do a lot of in form of research, monitoring and evaluation research. We also do under that like a social audits. Like we try and guide people, even if when you look at the nature of our projects as a country, many of them have failed because of poor background check, right? Even from the government to other development partner. Like we are just always keen on spending money and saying we have done this and that. So we help people come up with monitoring and evaluation schedules. And we also, sometimes we even implement projects. And now the final part that we do, other than management advisory and monitoring and evaluation, we do capacity building trainings a lot to organizations, to chamas, on all these stuff, basically on organization development, because we are so much keen on development and the sustainability part of it. And now we have this package, since we realize many young people, like I said, they are doing amazing thing of driving change, but they lack skills. We have this package of Ubuntu community. Currently, we have like 120 community members. where we just build their capacities and bring them together for a mentorship session. Like every 2 weeks, like we have a guest speaker. It's kind of training on specific topics, like it can be how to do advocacy and partnership. And what we do in this package, it's affordable in that, like for you to attend the trainings, it's absolutely free. There are 2 sets. Since we also want sustainability, there's a set where it comes with some privileges. You pay 3,000 annually, and then a set that is absolutely free because we do not want to cut out other people. And we've made it, we don't care about like, we've made it so simple that we even have people who never finished Form 4, but they're doing amazing work in the community. So this package is mainly for many young people. So what we do, we take them through creating business plan, through doing effective advocacy and partnership, like we mentor them through what they do, with the sole aim of supporting them to establish sustainable organization, and also to be able to negotiate, to be able to create business models that also cater for their needs in as much as they are reaching for the society. Yes. So, David, is there anything I have? There's a question you asked about some of the gaps. I think I said like, I think I mentioned earlier on, like the main gap to me is just mentorship, skill development, and capital. But I never put money, because when I was starting even Ubuntu, I did not have any money. Like if any young person who wants to do something amazing, your ideas and your passion and everything, you should never wait to have money, because you'll never have like just enough money. So basically, David, that is what we do. And even in this session, we are looking forward to partner with very many young people who are struggling to find bearing. We are very accommodative because, like I said, we are a social enterprise. We are not just interested in profits in as much as we want profits, but we also have packages that cater for that. But we are also in profits. We are also interested in reaching out and empowering more young people, because there's a lot of problem when you look at Kenya, right from our education system that never prepared us to be innovators and social innovators, right from our attitude. And that's why we are willing to support more young people to stand up for themselves and just to change the narrative of Africa and to address our problems.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, from the whole scope of what you presented, you have solutions that you're working on, and those solutions are kind of matched to the very gaps that you've identified. And this is something that I remember, there's a discussion that I had earlier with a friend. The skills gap exists. We have ideas, we have some problems in our societies that we want to solve, but then we lack the skills of how to put these ideas into action. So if we don't have the skills to implement them, that is a gap. And I feel like when we have such kind of incubations that are enabling people to get the right skills they need, then we're already solving part of the equation. And then another thing that we have to look at is in terms of, there's a point that you mentioned about the financing bit. And I know people are here because everybody is talking about businesses. And when somebody talks about entrepreneurship, the first thing that comes to mind is the money. Because they look at it in terms of doing business. What is in business when there's no money in it? So, and then people looking at it in terms of the capital. I think this is something that I would love to hear from you, Robert and Kisiangani, Nafula, in terms of what do you consider the resources when somebody is starting up? You have an idea, but you feel like you don't have the solution. How do you bridge that gap? From Villgro end, I've heard Robert is talking about capital investment in such kind of innovative ideas and giving them the initial support to venture capitalists. So what are the other options that exist for these young people?
Okay. Let me start on that. Like I said, I did not start my company with any, I didn't have money. But actually I started Ubuntu out of frustration. I was, I had a scholarship, then I was gone, then I realized I'm still in the country. Then I started writing down all my skills, because for years, over 5 years, I'd been doing things, and I wrote winning proposals. I'd done quite a lot of things. So I sat down and wrote all the skills that I have. The only resource that I had was a laptop. And then like I knew somewhere in Nairobi where there is internet, where I could just go and start working on my concept and other things. So sometimes capital is overrated. Young people should learn to start small. capital is important, but financial capital is also overrated. My main capital was network. I had a lot of network. Like I said, when I resigned from my work, I was just volunteering. I volunteered. I've been in the United Nations major groups of children and youths. I've been in East African Youth Parliaments. Like I had been in politics, like ANC. Like I'd been in very many platforms, and that's why I encourage young people to volunteer. Because when you volunteer, it's the only opportunity where you can be a cleaner and a CEO at the same time for someone from a PA. So you learn, you get direct skills, everything, because all those skills are important in running an organization. So when I was starting off, I did not have anything, but now I had to go people. I knew that because I was in the network of young female leaders of Kenya, I was in very many networks. So, because I know that if I want this, I will get here. I know like, this lawyer, I volunteered, let's say in the organization, and she's good in this. So like, for me, I had so many people who are willing to help me and give me their skills. My major capital was actually networks. And then also for a young person who is aspiring also to become and how do you get these networks? I want to encourage entrepreneurs who are young people to be like everywhere, attend these trainings, and then also be very intentional about your personal development. This fellowship, because I'd been through Yali, I'd been through Binti Wongozini, I'd been through a number of fellowships. Like I was always eager to learn and to learn from, and every opportunity I used to apply. When David, we are always online, like most young people. What are they doing online? In opportunity desk, there are so many opportunities. That is where you get networks, in those fellowships and in other things. So your networks are very important, unless you're starting something like maybe you're producing. If you're manufacturing, I understand, you might need that capital. But also now these skills also, and the reason why I give people skills is because there are also some opportunities for funding, which you also have to tap if you have skills. Like I will tell people, like when I was applying for Tony Elumelu, that I won, the one that I won, it had like some capital of $500,000. You know, it entails so much, like the financial bit, and that's why I empower young people, because some people, one thing I also feel bad about most of this is that they are very elitist. And I was lucky because, you know, like I said, I have a very strong background in finance and accounting and CPAs, and then I also have a very strong background in social development. So that worked for me because the finance bit is what was finishing most people. So when you people should learn to, if you are an entrepreneur, do not limit yourself in what you're doing. You should be horizontal in your learning. Like, don't say simply because I'm doing something in engineering, I'm not going to learn something about finance. Like an entrepreneur, when you're starting, you really need to be very thirsty for knowledge. And yeah, someone asked about the networks local. Yeah, there are very many local networks. My networks, most of them have been local. Like over 3/4 of them, just those friends you go to, I was going to demonstrate with. Like, I'm sure you have a friend who is a lawyer, another friend who is a doctor, another friend who is in IT. So you also negotiate that I can do this for you, do this for me for free. Like for me, I will say, I am good in this. Let me do this. Like I appear, maybe I'm a guest, you want me to speak, like let's say for David, I negotiate. Like I have a friend who said, like, I'm coming to your event, but I want you to help me put up my business model. You get it? How young people can negotiate among themselves. Because the reality is that sometimes you can wait for money forever. It should not kill your morale. We should start also thinking of starting small. And also investors, they also invest where there is impact. They don't just put their money, they cannot believe in you if you haven't started. Most investors will not believe in just an idea. They want to see what are you doing and what's your vision and everything. So at the end of the day, you'll just have to start defining, because the most important part about a business to me, it's just gaining clarity. I cannot even say if we are done with branding even on our part, because that is the most you keep, and you do not need money to do that. You need like rights. When you put money ahead, you will not achieve anything. In other words, money is really, really important. Like this grant got us when we were going, when I had put up like everything, the systems in place. So when I was applying, it was even easy to explain myself. So when you're doing, you have to do the hard work. There's a hard work that young people have to do. That's what I'll say with regards to capital.
Thank you so much. Robert, maybe you could give us your contributions of it. Let's try as much as possible to limit the duration that we're using to speak about this issue. But we move to the next questions as well, because I have a number as well here. So, Robert.
Thank you. I think I just want to say Mildred has really put it very, very nicely. If you don't have capital, make sure you have social capital. That's the networks. And then the only thing I'd want to add is think of social networks, not just in terms of the places where you are learning from people and accessing people who are already in the market, but also think of your peers. I think the age for university is a very unique age because that's really our formative years. And the way I look at it, it's just like dating. If you're in engineering, please diversify your network. You can't have only friends that are all gonna be they all go to School of Engineering. It's only people within that part of the campus that you really mingle with. Then you're doing yourself a disservice. Make sure that you're also mingling with the guys that are doing the BCom, people who are doing the medicine, people who are doing the agriculture, whatever else, because then within that aspect of networking diversely, purposely, that's when you're able to know this is my core strength, this is what I'm trained in, and for my vision to take off, yes, you're going to need all of these other skill sets, but you can be able to sell them your vision because you also need to build an entrepreneurial team that is complementary. So I think going back to Nafula, I think social capital, social capital, social capital. Then the second one is to highlight that, and I know she said that the opportunities are elitist, but let me assure you, if you look at our educational system, the fact that you've gone to university, you are already an elite. Because if you were to think about it, the number of children that started primary school, by the time we get to high school, we get about a 50% drop off. Then now you take the ones that do high school and then you ask yourself, out of this high school, what is our capacity for university? Or even for higher education? And then you realize how many more are dropping off. And you can already see that actually just having a degree has already put you within that elite. The key thing here is going back to, again, what Nafula said, were you given that degree to get a job, or did you listen to what happened during the graduation? You're given the power to read. So let us take an interest. Let us read widely. Let us give ourselves the exposure. And then the last one I'm going to add is we are again blessed in terms of Kenya and Nairobi in particular being a global hub for social entrepreneurship. It's not even an African hub. We really are actually a global hub. And this is because almost anybody who is doing anything in social entrepreneurship or in impact investment, chances are they're a startup if they don't have an office in this country, in this Nairobi. So we're extremely privileged. There's a big difference in terms of what's accessible to you just working within this city compared to if you were in Kisumu or if you were in Kampala or if you were in, and the farther away you go, the harder it is to access because we have so many incubators, so many accelerators, so many, we call them enabling intermediary or enabling organizations that are out there to support you. Listening to Nafula talking about Ubuntu, I'm thinking, wow, where was she when I was graduating? But I think these things are here now. They're here today. So part of the things that also really encourage everybody to do is just do your homework, ask questions, and really identify all these resources that are available for you because they were not there. Let's also not take it for granted. 5 years ago, Villgro was not there. I think around the same time with Ubuntu, we seem to be around the same age. But even before that, NILAB, iHub, you name all of these guys, they really were not there 5, 10 years ago. So now that they're here, how do we leverage that? How do we ensure that we benefit? And to me, yes, it may look elitist, but my main argument is that you guys are actually the elite. All these platforms have been built for you. Please step up. Let's take advantage of them. Yeah, and is there anything else I wanted to add? I think, yeah, that would be it. Over to you, David.
Thank you so much. So when you look at it in terms of financing, the main point that I can take from you is, yes, thank you. So in terms of what we look at in terms of the financing and the initial capital, when we look at the social enterprising, we look at the money. It's not the money. The social capital is going to come in as a resource. And I remember most of the initial money in solid cash, but you have people, and these people have our resources. They can come and share that knowledge, share those insights. And those insights are what's helping you refine the problem. And once you have that kind of a social network, we have ideas on what needs to be done, how it's going to be done, then you build the skills. Because with the skill, you have something to offer. And that is something that Nafula alluded to. You have something to offer because you can have an inter-organizational trade. And that's something that I can give you an example that we have at this particular moment. Planet Wizard was founded last year. And Planet Wizard, the CEO is part of the culture team, the head of our branding. So when you see these kind of good graphics that are here, it's from courtesy of Hezron Munyakin, Planet Wizard founder. But because we have the mutual relation, how do we advocate for the same ideals and use your skill and I use my skill so that we build one another and grow? And then as you mentioned, that we have identified the problem. The social problems are aligned to SDGs, health. There's research that was done. Now let's solve the problems that were outlined by using our solutions and our ingenuity and skills. And that puts us ahead. Rather than not having the money, we have a skill that we can put into place. And that skill gets us on the move so that we refine the solution. So those are some of the things that are very critical for all of us as young people to know. It might not be the money, but at the end of the day, with the skills, with the right social network and the right platforms, you get the solutions. And as Robert mentioned just now, we have so many hubs. I got to know about Villgro, that was in 2018, when I was at IBIS in Strathmore University. And it was just mentioned to me there's Villgro. Then I started following through. And now on this platform, we have the liberty to have Robert Karanja speak to us on what Villgro does. For the 20 of us who are part of this discussion now, you have an idea of where to start. And that idea of where to start is already exposing you to opportunities. If you're talking about elitism, you are an elite because you know something that so many other people don't have an idea about. That's the starting point. For us as entrepreneurs, people want to make a difference in the society. So that is something that I believe is very critical as well. And then there's something that I wanted to ask from your end now for Robert. You mentioned there's this gap in terms of translation of research and academia into solutions. And when even from the discussion that Nafula alluded to, you have it in terms of our education system is preparing you to go for an employment that doesn't exist. And even now, when you look at it, most of these startups, these small and medium-sized SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, are the ones that are offering more jobs to the graduates and even the young people in the society. So this kind of translation, it means someone is expecting to get a job, yet there are the people who are going to create jobs because so many of the SMEs are the ones that are employing people. How do we have that mindset shift so that we look at all the lessons that we're learning as ideas to solve problems in our society, and how do we make that bridge to start actually implementing it?
That's a tough question, and I think there's no easy answer to it. There's two things that I believe must be in place. The first one is appreciating innovation and systems of innovation. Because innovation is really not, especially when you're talking of the research to impact gap. We use the words research and innovation almost interchangeably, and it messes up our thinking and it messes up our ability to excel in innovation. So for me, the way I try to do it is I look at it as research as a process and I look at innovation as a process. And I actually think of it like a redox equation. If you think back to chemistry, so you have an input called money, and you have a process called research, and you end up with an output called new knowledge created. And then that new knowledge, if you have to think of the reverse of it, you start with new knowledge as an input. You have a process called innovation that with an output called money. So if you think of it that way, then you start to see innovation really as the antithesis of research, because you're actually trying to take the output of research and create the input of research. Because the input of research is the research grant. You must have the research. It's not cheap. You know, science is not. It's expensive. You need infrastructure. You need expertise. You need a lot of training. You need all of these things. So how do you make money from the new knowledge? The reality is that innovation is not automatic. There are many challenges that have to be addressed. You need to be able to see the end from the beginning. If you're not seeing, even from when you're in the lab, if you're not being able to understand, this is how this, you know, how do I communicate to an investor? I'm solving a problem for malaria. It's a drug. What is the market size? Market size is not the prevalence of malaria. It's about how many drugs exist for malaria and how many of them were sold in this economy in the last 5 years. And how much of that then do you say you want to be able to access or to be able to win? You know, so how do you, all of that takes much more. It takes more than the research that you are doing on the bench or in the clinical setting to address the malaria issue. You also need to do market research. You also need to understand the supply chain. You need to understand what are the needs of the manufacturer, what are so what's in it for all of these people in that value chain to get your product out there in the right price, in the right positioning, with the quality that is required. So we do need to actually lobby to some extent for the government to give the health sector especially a priority in terms of when you're thinking about our national systems of innovation, because for Kenya, the default setting is for ICT. Now, ICT and biotech, they are worlds apart. In as much as digital is in everything, yes, we have informatics, we have all of these genomics and all of those things that have big data play to them. But the reality is that the capex for life sciences is way up here, whereas for tech solutions, it's down here. If I'm, if I'm talking of a startup that is doing a diagnostic, I need to be able to be thinking of seed capital of roughly between $400,000 to $500,000 to be able to move it from proof of concept, technical proof of concept to actually having it available in the health facility or in the pharmacy. Now, if I'm talking of a digital solution, it's likely that, and that's gonna be a journey of about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. If I'm talking of a digital solution for education or something like that, the reality is I can create something within 3 months. It could be out in the market. It could cost me $50,000 or even less in some cases. So, and then the regulatory overheads are very different. So we do need to highlight to the government, number one, we have a competitive strength or a competitive edge as a country when we focus on life sciences that also serves us better because the ability to do Me Too's is harder. So when you're thinking of business opportunities, you do the SWOT analysis, but then you also do Potter's 5 forces, and you understand that what are the barriers of entry. So that capex, it's a hurdle when you are starting off yourself, but once you've crossed it, then it's part of what keeps you in business for longer, because not many people are able to cross it. And then of course, then you add the IP and all of these other things that you need to do to maintain that competitive edge. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that our innovation system speaks to more than tech. And it's not trying to be cookie cutter that what works for tech is going to come and work in the life sciences. So that's one issue. Then the second one, I think, is who again is also doing this. Science is very interesting. Your value goes up with age. So one of the things that I keep facing is, I still believe that we are wrongly expecting too much of the youth. To be told you've studied now, you have to create your own job is not realistic. We can create jobs, but there'll be subsistence businesses. For you to avoid going to a subsistence business, you need to actually get strong mentorship. I think for listening to Nafula, she was giving her story and her experience. She, in essence, what she called volunteering for those number of years, the 5 years that she was out there doing interesting stuff, is in essence equivalent to a 5-year work experience. So the work ethic, how do you deal with emails? The networks that she created out of all of that, you need to find that within the industry. So if your interests are in a certain industry, if they're in the health sector, if they're in the agriculture, if they're in the manufacturing sector, you need to go out there and actually work within that industry to get the experience and build the networks. So asking you to be able to create a business that will work straight out of graduation is unrealistic. And we need to acknowledge it for what it is. Innovation is really not about the youth. It's really about just coming up with a good business and proving that you can be able to do it. So in as much as capital is not that critical, the know-how is critical, and know-how only comes through experiential learning. So no shortcuts to that. And then the networks, the social capital to be able to make you go forward is a second piece of it. Then the third one will be that work ethic, the ability to actually focus and, now hustle correctly, which is really, it takes tears, guts, and blood to build a company. And Nafula, anybody will attest to that. Anybody who's built a venture will tell you it's never easy. So that dedication and the grit, even when things are tough, is a critical part of it. But we need to make sure that we make it as easy as possible. And then for me, the only way that I can think of that allows you to build a company without the know-how, without the networks, is to have co-founders that bring that to you. So if you're in university and you did amazing research, whether it was for your master's or for your PhD or your postdoc, and you look at it and you're like, actually, this is really something that can touch lives, can impact lives. If it was to see the light of day, create a company, yes, but don't create it by yourself. Make sure your professor is with you, because they are a critical part of creating that solution. And I think for academia, we also need to allow our professors, we need to allow our researchers, our scientists, to wear both hats, because as it is right now, a lot of the discussions I'm having with academia is, yes, I'm employed by, let's say, Kenyatta University. I've invented something. I want to be able to make sure that this goes all the way and starts to impact lives. But if I create a company, then my employer starts thinking I'm stealing time from them, and or there's something shady. Actually, there's no other way of doing the technology transfer. Technology transfer cannot work purely by patenting and licensing, because even if I license the technology from you, the know-how is never in black and white. The know-how is integral with the living, breathing person that invented it. So they need to be able to go out and be a part of the industry. And that's where technology parks now come in. So what in essence you're trying to do is to tell your professors and to tell your scientists, rather than you go create those companies out there, so that you can still continue working for me, even as you do this technology transfer process, we'll create for you an office here. You'll still use the same lab that you are using for the invention to continue with the product development until there's sufficient traction for you not to go out there and set up the manufacturing and all of that. So that thinking of technology park, not in terms of brick and mortar, but in terms of looking critically at all of the research that we are doing in our graduate schools, in our research institutes, and asking the question, is there market value? Can this actually be done competitively vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis Brazil, vis-a-vis South Africa? And can we be able to then take the effort to build it out and creating the convergence of private sector and academia on campus, not looking at it as corruption or looking at it as unethical, but looking at it as technology transfer, because that is what industrialization really entails. It's really about building a knowledge economy and creating a convergence between the academia and the private sector. So that really needs to happen. And then on top of that, like I'm saying, if you are the young student, don't try to do it alone. Do it in partnership with this academia, within that kind of within that technology park. And that is easier. So for me, when I'm looking at it, and you're telling me you're looking to raise $500,000, and you come to me and you've never dealt with 1 million Kenya shillings, how can I? $500,000 is how many in Kenya shillings? You know, so even that in itself is a risk from an investor perspective. But then if you're partnering with your professor, and he or she, I can look at them and I can look at their CV, and they've probably been handling grants in the $2 million, $5 million, $10 million kind of grants in the research that they're doing. Even the financial mechanisms, even the experience, all of that, I can see it in that team.
Yeah. And
I'll acknowledge that, yes, this professor is still an employee there, but now you, the young one who has been working with them, you also contributed to the science and you have some of the know-how. Under their tutorship, under their mentorship, can be the one person who is fully dedicated and you can wear that CEO title or whatever. That is investable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So from what you've covered, it's very critical. Some of the things that we feel like there's that experiential learning that's required in actual doing the work. And this is something that we could, when you talk about lobbying, this is something that should be integrated even in the training programs, the universities as well. Then beyond that, getting someone who has the experience, who has the know-how, and has the reputation, the credibility. Because for somebody to fund your idea, they need to be able to bank on you. And that is where now the research institution, the training institution can form kind of an anchor and ecosystem that enable these innovations to thrive and enable us grow. And that's a very important bit. Now I'm going to use that just for 2 minutes, Nafula, or 2, 3. You could tell us what are the different issues that we could now focus, because as Robert has mentioned, we have most of our innovation in the country, the entrepreneurial investment going to the tech aspect, but nobody is looking into the social development, science, and all that. And these are also very critical. So how can we bring in the aspect on social innovation, the social development models into our own innovative models from your experience and your work? Yes, Mildred.
I think, hello, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think there is, I think it's for social development mainly to be prioritized. It's mainly about our attitude, our attitudes, like for people just to be sensitized. Like we've been living in a very capitalistic society where people think about profits. It does not matter. It does not matter if they're distracting or they're doing anything. Whatever they're doing, they just have to make money. We also have to promote ideas like Afri-capitalism. There is tech innovation can also work for social development. Like tech is at the center of a lot of innovation. When we advance it, we can also leverage social development. Like look at what we do right now, for instance, in our package for Ubuntu community. We are using tech because we wanted something that is high impact, low cost. And you see our discussions normally happens online. Our discussions happen via WhatsApp, and then we do like the blogs, we send people like the training material, we compile them, all that is tech. So tech can also be used, there can be a perfect collaboration between tech and social development, because it's making our work easier. That is just in place, but we also need to promote the spirit of Afri-capitalism so that Africans can start being sensitive about their business activities, and we can begin that are very intentional, just growing Africa, so that we can kill on the unproductive entrepreneurship. Social development is so wide, but it's all about attitude change, but a lot of sensitization for people to see that a lot of problems in Kenya lies in social development.
Thank you so much. Problems we have, social problems, especially look at it in terms of access to education, access to healthcare services, access to good food and nutrition issues, and all these are social issues that are affecting our lives. But at the end of the day, because the approach that is given them and even the different social programs that are being established, people don't see the much of the impact or the allure in them. People want hype stuff, and that's where now technology wins as well. But we have to acknowledge both and bring them together. So that's a very important bit. So I'll give you
and sorry, can I just add something? Mm-hmm. And in line with that, also to amplify social development. Mm-hmm. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
A lot of research is also relevant. That's why I also emphasize on the bit of research, because there's also a lot of clout in social development. Like, for instance, currently people just going and dishing pads and saying, we are mentoring. That is not enough, because when you look at the problem is not just about girls not having pads. The problem is about the software. It's about girls who have been raised in patriarchy, girls who don't believe in themselves, girls who are still sitting down waiting to be rescued. You get it? Who still feel vulnerable when the feministic spaces have been widened. It's all about in the attitude. So there's also a need of a lot of research in social development, actually. And that's why for us, when you see like one of our products is monitoring and evaluation, like there are so many organizations running around, like the word empowering is sort of like a cliche. Everyone is speaking about empowering, even those who are disempowering. You get it? So like, what is empowering? That's why we are keen on monitoring and evaluation. We are keen on which, like, people have to, before you even start something, do you know the desirable impact you want to do? Like, that's how we are empowering the people who are under us. Like, we are helping them do things the right way, record impact. Like, if you are refine their concepts, so that people have just been, even some of them are advancing like wrong ideas, but they're saying we are empowering. Like, even those who are doing FGM feel like they are empowering girls. You get it, to go into adulthood. So like, empowering has been such a cliche. We are just helping people to be more sensitive about what is development, what is social development. And that can also be when they are able to not just go and show up, but like David even right here, when you are able to tell me what impact has this conversation generated, and now how are we going to move forward? And I expect that from you, because I expect that from, from here, maybe we have like follow-ups from the members who have participated in this engagement, so that if they need help, maybe how can we still come into, I like such conversations and such engagements. Not just you just appear, I have done this and that. I personally do a lot of monitoring to see if I'm effective. That next time when I'm coming on board, maybe I should address this or that. Yes.
Translating that kind of work that you've done to the actual impact it has on the people. Because if it doesn't serve the needs of these people, then it's not making any impact. And that's very important. Yeah, that's acknowledged. Then before we get into the questions, I want to ask you the last question. What opportunities lie in your space as Ubuntu? For young people, probably people who want to get into the space, who want to start into venture entrepreneurship and related. What opportunities do you have on your space that they can take advantage of at this point in time, especially when COVID is there, but they need to get access to the opportunities and see how they position themselves in the next phase?
Like I said, our Ubuntu community is young people friendly. Like we say, there is a package that is absolutely free. Skill development, like we develop for you skills. If you go to our website, there's a place for resources. You can read some of the bits. Those who want to join, they can just maybe I'll share our contacts on the. I'll share our contacts on the chat room, so that they can, if they want to join our community, what you have for basically skill development, and they will learn of other opportunities, maybe when they are there, because sometimes we have job opportunities, sometimes, but we are more keen about increasing the capacities of young people to run organizations, because if you are not, most people complain that the organizations are not growing, or you can see the organizations that are stagnating. When you look critically, it's all about systems and structures. You have not put systems in place, and that is a lot of work. Like Dr. Robert said, it entails a lot of discipline, a lot of patience, like to put up the systems and structures. That is what most young people have. So when they join Ubuntu community, those are the things we are going to guide them into, because our emphasis is, do you have right systems, right structures? Can you stand and even defend the impact you want to create? Or you're just speaking about empowerment. What is empowerment? Can you even define that concept? Can you narrow down what do you want to achieve? As you cannot do like Dr. Robert said, you have a startup on this, on that one. You do not even know. And when you analyze keenly, their purpose are even conflicting. First of all, it starts with you being self-aware on what you want to achieve. And that's why I emphasize that the most important bit on entrepreneurship, from my perspective, is having clarity of purpose. What do you want to achieve? And that purpose should be a gap that is outside there. You should be solving problem. We should have problems. So it should be addressing an existing problems. Otherwise, you will just run like a headless chicken, and shortly you will be disappointed and run away from the. So David, there is opportunity. I'm going to share our numbers. Those who are at that phase and maybe they need a lot of guidance and mentorship, we are here for them.
Thank you so much. And Robert, I'll be back on you. I realized you lost your power at some point, but welcome back. So you're giving a moment so that you could share the opportunities you have on your end that these people can take advantage of, especially with COVID or even post-COVID. Like, entrepreneurship never stops. If it started on our end in 2018 and have been following up on you, we have to find a way to keep working. So what are the opportunities you have on your space that these people can take advantage of? And then there was also another question that was posed to you. And what's the
question?
What does the scope of life sciences entail? It was a question from Jean Kasudi.
Okay, great. So let me start with that one because it's a simpler one. So in terms of life sciences, what we're able to look at is anything outside of drugs and vaccine. And the reason for those two is because if you're doing innovative drugs or vaccine development, then the lead time is quite long. You typically are looking at about 10 years, and they actually claim $100 million in investment, which I disagree with. I think it's done that way because they give themselves too much money to achieve what can be achieved with much less money. But either way, we don't want to do drugs and vaccines, but we do want to be able to support innovators that are looking at medical devices, class A and B. So in short, basically non-invasive medical devices. We're also looking at diagnostics. We're very interested in anybody who's doing rapid kits or point of care diagnostics. People who are looking at the whole aspect of infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases. We are also looking at anything that can be, it's usually quite hard. Technically, it's very easy in terms of preventive healthcare. Business model-wise, it's usually much harder, but we're very interested in that. We're also interested in people who are looking at issues to do with access to clean water. Again, how do we address the whole issue of preventive healthcare? I think health is access to clean water and sanitation is a big challenge. And we have also looked at startups that are looking at nutrition. So it is that, I will say, agriculture and health, it's basically two sides of the same coin. We are what we eat. So again, nutrition is one of the areas that we've looked at. Yeah, so I think that would be the scope. And then and supply chain. So I talked of supply chain. Those ones would not necessarily, they may be scientific. We've looked at companies that are coming up with, especially looking at cold chain delivery, whether it is heat stable solutions, or whether it is reducing the carbon footprint in terms of the cold chain deliveries. So many mechanisms of doing things like that. So it's basically very broad. It could be whatever it is that you're looking at within the health space. The other thing that I could say about what we provide, as I said, we are actually very good at supporting health entrepreneurs. I think our key strength is really understanding how to integrate innovations into the health system. The number one rule in health is do no harm. So before you even tell us the wonderful stuff that your innovation is doing, the first problem that you'll always face is convincing, not by argument, but by data, that actually you're doing no harm, is the number one hurdle. So how do you integrate your innovation into the health system is very critical. And we have a lot of expertise and experience in that space. We do provide our incubation services really for free. So we actually have a for-profit arm that does investment. We have a non-profit arm that does all of this business incubation because we really want to support homegrown solutions. The only critical thing is think big. We say start big, think global, but start local. So you should always think big, but be able to start small, just like Nafula demonstrated for us in her story. And then, of course, ensure that the problem that you're solving is really worth solving. There's that scope for scale, and you have built an entrepreneurial team around that vision that actually has the complementary skill sets to yourself. So if you're able to address those,
that's okay. We are losing you, Robert. Hello. We've had a technical hit with Robert. So there's a question that has come, Nafula, maybe you could chip in. There's a gap between policymakers, that's the government, and the youth. For example, there's a major disconnect between these two. You find a 21-year-old youth is being expected to have like 50 years of experience. That's in terms of the scope of what they're expected to have done and how they can articulate their problem statement. So it's kind of the gap between the entrepreneurial space and the government and the policymakers and how we can bridge that. Maybe you could have an input on that. It's understandable, Robert. You're welcome back. But Nafula, you can make your contribution.
Yes, I think that also goes, yeah, there is a very big disconnection between policy and young people. And sometimes I think it's just deliberate. Don't worry, I changed my location. I might be appearing very dark. My phone was going off, so I went to some jungle to make sure that I finished this. So like, yeah, there is a deliberate gap, and the way even our policies are formulated are way problematic. Remember when I personally, like, they're not data driven. We need to change. We need to start focusing on data driven policies. Like, so there are things that I read even outside there. When you even look at the qualifications of even getting a job in Kenya, many young people are still struggling with health, but some of those qualifications, they're just to rule out young people. And you wonder like what informed them. I don't know if it is ignorance or just what, but yes, there is a big challenge. There is a policy issue. We are trying to, we have to push for data-driven policy, and even which models are used in policy formulation process. Like the whole thing of citizen participation to me is just it's something that has been controlled by cartels. Like a few political brokers will go somewhere and then they just pass an agenda, and not the real youth who are struggling with it. So yes, there is a very big problem. Like for case studies in Kenya is that the government is marginalizing its own youth through policy. And that is a very big challenge that young people have to speak about. But there is a lot of hope. A lot is changing. First of all, like the education curriculum is changing. Even that experience, because the government has also been desperate. Like there was also another challenge is that there was too much, like that. Another good thing that is happening in Kenya is this thing of TVETs. And I keep emphasizing on young people, if the sole reason why you are going to school is to get employment, that in it is very problematic. It is really problematic. Like if we are going to school, because when you look at our previous education system, it was more of a colonial model that was helping Africans to be slaves of the system. That's why you are going to learn about the British system. In primary, we were just narrating all those things. We were never narrating how to improve policies and systems, but they were just teaching us about the rules of the game so that we follow the rules of the game, not that we change the rules of the game. So also by introduction of this new curriculum is also a step to the right direction. So I can say that there is a big problem, but I think the government has also realized, because when they marginalize youth, Kenya can even be ungovernable, because we see the levels of crime. Look at how young people are now in drugs because of frustrations and everything. So it's like everyone is losing, because they end up using a lot of money in doing corrective things. So there is, David, in as much as it's been like that, there is a lot of hope, but even us as young people who are in leadership space, we should also try and lobby and also push ourselves to be those, to participate in the government processes, like actively. We also have to analyze our values as a nation. Like, why are you going to school? I was in my campus. I was in UON Lower Kabete when I was doing my undergraduate. In my class, nobody got below A-. But the way we were so desperate to be employed even as clerks. And you can imagine, maybe these are the top creams of the country wanting to become clerks, because our perception of success right from our villages is I finish school, I wear a suit, I get a job, you get it, and maybe I get a husband. So already I'm like a hero, something like that. So, and this is the brain that is supposed to be innovating. I don't even expect someone who has gone through university to still come back and start competing for jobs like clerk with someone who maybe they did a certificate or diploma. They should be coming outside here to create more job and that is the mentality we need. Or even if you are in employment, there is also something we call entrepreneurship. You within the organization, what is your value addition? You should not just be going there to be reprimanded and all that. So yeah, there is a problem, but a lot of, like I said earlier on, also a lot of our problem, like 3/4 of our problem, is also in our mindset and how we've been socialized. We need to evaluate, but there is a lot of hope. We are doing, even this conversation is very important. We are doing a lot of talking, like we are trying to reach out. The government is also trying, it's trying to put up it's trying its best, though it's not doing enough. But also us, we have to start being interested in those governance systems. One problem with young people, the same young people who are complaining, are the young people who will tell you, I hate politics. And politics defines everything. I really love politics for one reason, because it defines everything. It defines my fate as an entrepreneur, as a young person, and everything. So my voice has to be there so that I also influence. Young people should start using their voices. That's what I'll say about that. We also have a role.
We have a role to play, and especially when you look at it in the policy space, what I realized, young people are not getting the benefits because we are not part of the discussions. When people are talking about policy, we stay away from it, but at the same time, we are the very people complaining about policies that are not responsive to our needs because we don't communicate the need. So that is something that's very critical. Maybe, Robert, you could make a contribution on the same, and I've realized you've answered another question that was posed there, how to provide access to the finances. Thank you for that. We are already out of time, so just the final comments.
Okay, mine I think will be brief, and I think
we cannot just blame the government.
I think one of the things I've learned is, and maybe I'm a little different from Nafula's stance, because I think it sounds a bit adversarial, and for me, I've realized there's a lot more to be gained by not being adversarial. Because in many cases, I think, like I said, when you ask the youth to create their own jobs, it's a setup. That doesn't work. You're going to need capital that's going to come from the people who have the disposable income, and it's likely not going to be youth. It's going to come from the older people. It's going to come from government. It's going to come from non-government organizations. So either way you look at it, it's critical to build partnerships and to ask, what is it that I have that these people also need? How do I create a win-win? And when we're able to find a way of aligning our interests, because for me, if somebody approaches me and they're pitching to me and all I hear is me, I shut down. And it's the same thing with you guys. If you are to be honest, if you met a salesperson, and let me take the most famous example, the insurance guys. Some of those guys from the banks that they're selling loans. If they don't, chances are you start putting filters and blocks in their way. And if, as the youth, you want people to not do that to you, you need to stop being youth focused. You need to be society focused. In fact, talk about the person that you're talking to. Understand their problems and speak to their problems, and so show how you can create value by them partnering with you. And that way, because everybody has their mountain of problems, whether we think they're big or small, but to the person who's carrying it, it's a mountain. Now, chances are that if you can do anything to lessen that burden, number one, you'll get an audience. Number two, you can then now be able to actually have a conversation to engage and to say, how can we, how can you help me to help you? Because now it's not about, it's not a sense of entitlement. It's really just a matter of saying, I hear you, I can see the challenges, and I think I have a solution, but for my solution to work, I may need 1, 2, 3. This is how we can collaborate on this. And that would be a very different way. And for me, the way for the youth to get hard is really by becoming economically strong. So how we play this game is really critical. The politics are great, and there's a room, and it's really important that we play a critical, our role in terms of voting and choosing the right people. But beyond that, I think it's even more important when we can be able to finance those political campaigns. Because the person that pays the paper calls the tune. If we want corruption to end, and we are financing the campaigns, the corruption will end. It won't end from us just voting. Otherwise, they'll all pretend and they get there wanatugeuka. So it's about building. We need to tip that the center of gravity to bring it to the position where it's actually in everybody's interest, including politicians, to stop being corrupt and all of that. And we can only do it by building credible businesses. Let's create wealth. There's lots of opportunity for innovation. As I said, please don't try and do it alone. Create entrepreneurial teams. Look for, if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the industry expertise, then you do need to find mechanisms of working with those who have it. Because either way, at least I know you're going to be bringing enthusiasm, you're going to be bringing energy, you're going to be bringing time. Because if you're able to devote your time and effort to something, it will actually work. There are people who I know who have a lot of money, but that money cannot translate into a solution because they don't have the bandwidth. So having the bandwidth alone, and the fact, like I say, that you are a graduate, you are actually already in the elite of this country, already in the elite of this continent, is extremely valuable. Don't sell yourself short. You actually have a lot more to contribute than sometimes we do give ourselves credit for. So I'll say, let's make it a partnership. It's not a fight. It's not about a generational issue. It's really just kila mtu anabeba msalaba. We need to be a part of the solution, and we will be able to win the war that way.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Karanja. So I'll give you a moment as well, Kisiangani, to make your final remarks.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's always my pleasure speaking to young people and just supporting them to get bearing. You know, if we are many in the game, it becomes easier. Like Dr. Robert Karanja has said, this is not something you can do alone. Like even me, like I can never say that I'm alone, and it's very important to build a team. And I want to encourage them that their dreams are very valid, and they should just put in the effort. As they should sit down and just strategize on what you want to achieve. It is really, really, really possible. And always play your part, be part of the solution. Like what I normally say, when you want something and you put all your intention on it, we put forth right intentions, right energy, the universe will always conspire to give you what you want. And there is also this fake illusion that you have to be like a child of someone, like to achieve something. No, there are so many children of Haile Selassie. I always call them children of Haile Selassie. That personally, I didn't know anyone. Whenever I enter into media houses, into spaces, the first thing I'm always asked, are you the daughter to Professor Kisiangani? And I just laugh. Sometimes I just accept to end the story there and to get my few privileges because I know what Kenya is. But in reality, you know, it has just been about passion, and then in my passion, people have been willing to support me. So any young person, there are so many good people outside there, but they respond to your energy. You don't need to, and then also, like, I also emphasize something on volunteering, and I forgot to tell you one thing about volunteering. When you're volunteering, also volunteer with an intention. Don't be like, in volunteering, also give yourself timeline and know what you want to learn in a particular space. Don't be like, also, there are also some people like they're in the same space for like 5 years or 10 years, it's not working out, you're bitter, you're wasting your time. Like, you really have to be very intentional about any space you enter to, so that you can be able to, monitoring and evaluation is also in your own personal life. To see if it's not working out, you change strategy that fits your purpose. Like, yes, like let me give an example politically. Maybe you have been a youth in politics in a particular political party. It has not worked for like 10 years or even 5 years. What are you doing there? Like, learn to change strategy. Like, we have to prioritize our growth. We have to do constantly monitoring and evaluation, even in our own lives, and to make sure that we are growing in any particular space. Even if it's just an inch, make sure that you are growing.
Thank you so much for that. This has been a wonderful session because we've learned a lot of stuff. And the most important information that we need to take from this place, there's room in the entrepreneurship space. There are so many incubation hubs, so many support programs that are in the space. So it's our time to take advantage of them. And when taking advantage of them, you need to know what solutions are we solving? What value do we have? What skills do we have to bring into the equation? Then once we match our skills and our value to the problem that we are solving, we get the people to amplify our intensity. And with that amplified intensity, we are moving to make the change that we need to make. As Robert said, and as it has always been said, we want to have a global perspective of what change we want to bring, but we have to start from the very places where we exist. Solve the problem at your house. After you solve it in your house, solve it in the village and the community where you stay. You'll solve it in the county, the country, African context, and ultimately the world will make a change because you started with the single step that you made. And that is what we need to aim for. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope we get to interact more beyond this. And we hope that as much as these conversations are continuing, we build the right ecosystems to support each other so that we get to the goal that we need. Thank you so much. Asanteni sana, Robert. Asante sana, Kisiangani. It's been a pleasure to host you guys.
Thank you.